Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm President Malone, and before I call this meeting to order, the board would like to take a few minutes to offer our condolences to Raul Lesa's parents, sister, brother, extended family, friends, and West High community on his recent passing. Raul, who was a ninth grader, and his family just recently moved to Iowa City and was looking forward to all the exciting experiences that were on the horizon. With Raul's unexpected passing, the West High community, as well as the greater Iowa City Community School District community, including the board, extend our open arms and support to the entire Lesser family during this difficult time. We offer them our sincere condolences and will remain by their side. At this time, I would ask that we take a moment of silence in honor of Raul Lesa. Thank you. I call tonight's September 10th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Directors to order. Thank you to those attending in person tonight and those staying engaged by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment and introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Eystone, Eastham, and Williams. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch, Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. And first up, we have the ICEA update from Brady Shutt.
Thanks, President Malone, Vice President Abraham, Director, Superintendent Degner. I'm Brady Shutt, the President of the Iowa City Education Association. I would like to start by recognizing and thanking all of the folks who are here with us. Our community is passionate about public education, and our passion for public education is to be respected and celebrated. So thank you for coming tonight. Thanks also to you, our school board, for your dedication and countless hours of service to our community and our students. And thank you to, importantly, to Superintendent Degner and his team for their commitment to our students and staff and for working with ICEA to forge a strong and collaborative partnership. Some of you will know, not everybody, but I'm a high school government teacher. And as you might imagine, especially as we're here on the night of the presidential debates, learning and talking about politics can be tricky. It's sort of like, I feel like I'm at Thanksgiving dinner a lot of days. So it can be tough. But to help with that, the students in my class propose and then vote on classroom norms. This is something, of course, a lot of teachers do. It's not just me. The norms are the commitment we have to each other. Because, as you might imagine, students don't always agree with each other and things can get spicy. But we share a commitment to each other and our learning community. So our norms for this year, as voted on by the students that I have, are be respectful of others, work hard, be open to new ideas, take ownership for your words and actions, judge ideas, not people, and be kind. And I've been thinking a lot about those in the last several days as our district-related discussions on some topics have ramped up. And those discussions are hard, and we are passionate. And we're not all going to agree with the ideas or proposals being discussed, and that's okay. And in fact, it's good and it's healthy for our decision-making process. But I do hope that throughout our dialogue, both tonight and in the days ahead, we will remain committed to each other, to our students, and to our shared values. I am confident that we can and will do that. So thank you for being here with us. Thanks to the board and for Matt and his team. And I look forward to hearing from our community tonight and the days ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll take a brief moment to allow people to turn in speaker forms. If you plan on speaking now, please, or later, please turn in your form. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ms. Colvin. Next on the agenda, we have our student representatives. First up, we have City High, Nicholas. Nicholas, if you want to come to the front to the podium right here.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Tran. I am the senior class president and representative of City High. And this is our VP.
Hi, I'm Ani Nasso. I'm the Vice President of City High Student Senate.
She actually just got elected today, so she had a great speech at the Student Senate body. She won the hearts of the people, so congrats to her. We're starting this school year off great, and we're hoping to continue it. We just had 2 senior events that both went well. Senior Sunrise the day before school started to fix up our senior sleep schedule, and our senior paint fight, which was super fun, in which our year we finally allowed the band kids to come join after years of not being able to do so. So they were completely covered in paint during our first home game. Our marching band has also been doing great throughout all the events we've been having.
It's definitely an exciting time of the year for us at City High because we're getting ready for our homecoming events, as our homecoming parade is right around the corner, followed closely by the homecoming dance. And after the parade on September 30th, we also have our annual Powder Puff tournament, which is our flag football tournament. Everybody's really excited for that, and we're planning for the dance that falls on October 5th. So.
Yeah. Previous from last year, we're looking to continue our Adopt a Yearbook idea, which once again is a fundraising for kids on free and reduced lunch to be able to get a yearbook since they're pretty expensive. And we want them to keep their memories of their friends and their teachers down the years. With the new freshmen coming in this year, we seem to have a lot more freshmen joining clubs and joining student activities at our school, and it's a great thing. I'm glad to see it happening because I remember my freshman year, I was way too shy to join any type of club or any activity at City. So I think we've done a great job at getting our clubs to look and be more accessible and inviting to the kids at City.
This year at City High, we have a new program called EPIC, and that stands for Every Person Impacts Culture. And with that, they're talking about the culture of the school, and you're sharing culture, you're sharing knowledge. So it allows us to tutor and mentor other students who need help with basically anything. And you can tutor helping with homework, schoolwork, or you can take a kid to a sporting event or just hang out after school. Play games together, which that's really fun. You go to a club with them. It's just bringing the community together while improving leadership. And it's been really fun for me, and I'm sure plenty of the other kids at City High, because it really has just brought me together with the lower classmen, and I spent a lot of time with the upperclassmen as I'm a senior this year, but it's been a really great opportunity.
This week, our football team will be playing against Ames High soon, so we're hoping for Iowa City High School to beat Ames to avenge the Hawkeyes for our little Cy-Hawk match. Go Hawks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Liberty High, Naomi and Elena.
Hi, my name's Elena. Naomi could not make it tonight. So Liberty has had a few pretty busy weeks and a good start to the school year. Our fall sports have had really great starts to all of their season. Our football team has won both of their mat games, and I know our boys cross country team just won their first meet. We also have had a good start to band. Our marching band has a Disney halftime performance, and they also just had their mattress fundraiser this past Sunday, and I've heard they made pretty good money from that. And then Liberty is having its second annual color run this Sunday, September 15th at 10 a.m. to fundraise for the Liberty Fund. I would encourage everyone to sign up. And then we did just have one question about school shooting procedures, and it's what are we doing to ensure safety as the numbers of school shootings increase? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have West High and Mustafa.
Thank you for having us, President Malone and Vice President Abraham. I'm Mustafa Tia, the student body president for West High. And
I'm Grace Fincham, the Vice President at West High.
okay, so this year we're starting off strong in both academics and athletics. We're proud to announce that we've been ranked the #1 high school in Iowa this year again for the public high school. And then for athletics, we are currently hosting Linn-Mar in a volleyball match here at West. And then we're also hosting West Waterloo in swimming at the rec center, which is going to be a good showdown to watch.
West High has been undergoing lots of new renovations. Everyone loves the new offices and counseling offices that were just re-renovated, as well as the new student commons that will be finished in October. West High tryouts are underway for the musical Chicago, which will be performed the first week of December.
And for our homecoming season, we're kicking off with the second annual West Parade, homecoming parade. And then later that day, we're going to be having our Powder Puff and what's called Man Ball for the Trojan Games. And then we're keeping the energy of the week high with Spirit Days. And some of the days are a little goofy, but I still like T-shirt signing day. And then on Thursday, we have our City versus West volleyball game, so that's going to be pretty hyped to watch. And then on Friday, we have our pep assembly, which is going to carry our energy into the game after school, which is against Cedar Rapids, Washington. And then the next day, we'll be closing out the homecoming season, with our homecoming dance. So looking forward to that.
Tomorrow it will be announced that once again, West will lead the district in 16 National Merit Scholars. Thank you.
Thank you. Tate High representative could not make it, but they did provide an update that is attached to the agenda. I would encourage everyone to take a moment to read some of the exciting things that they are participating in. I'll just highlight one, that Tate students actually volunteer in a community. They volunteer weekly at Houses into Home and monthly at the free lunch program because their students enjoy giving back to their community, and it motivates them to remain dedicated and work hard in their classes. And that concludes our student rep update, and we will move on to community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting. and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes per speaker for those who require the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the screen above Board Secretary Colvin. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And with that, our first speaker for tonight is Thomas, I believe last name is Roger.
Okay, thank you. When my elder son first started school, he was at Sabin Elementary, which at that time was regarded as the best school in Iowa City, although we lived a couple of blocks from Man. After he went to kindergarten there, Sabin was closed, and we were told that the best school was Shimmick. So we started sending him there, though I had to drive him there every day. After a while, we moved up into the Shimmick district. Just a few months ago, we bought a house that's even closer to Shimmick. We've had my stepson from the Philippines went there, who's now at City High. My 7-year-old daughter is in 2nd grade there now. People say that they're neighborhood schools, but the neighborhood doesn't make the school makes the neighborhood. People are attracted to a school. Some kids are able to stay at the school for 8 years, from preschool, kindergarten through, well, I guess just 7 years now, through 5th grade. That's a substantial amount of time. It puts them in the neighborhood. It's part of their heart. For them to have to go just from kindergarten to 2nd grade, or from 3rd grade to 5th grade, that's very disruptive. I know that you've had efficiency experts looking at the schools, trying to figure what to do with them, maybe on somebody's theories. But what is efficient is not necessarily what is best for the kids or for their families. What is best for the kids and the families is for them to be able to rely on the schools they are going to now, to know that those schools are going to be there for them. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next up, we have Allison Largo, followed by Matthew Fleming.
Hi, my name is Allison Largo. I live at 2109 Tanglewood. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that. My child just started kindergarten at Shimmick. I also went to Shimmick, but I have not lived in Iowa City since I graduated high school. I will not tell you in what year. We just moved back to Iowa City last year unexpectedly. We came to visit family. We were in Guanajuato, Mexico. That's where my husband's from, living there the last 12 years between Guanajuato and Dallas, Texas. My daughter was hospitalized And thank God she's fine now, but because of health concerns, we had to stay here, so we got kind of stuck. And I just wanted to say, and I might not be in the majority now that I'm kind of like talking with people, that we only looked for properties in West Liberty because they have a bilingual school. And so I am also a hospital interpreter, and I'm an interpreter at the Free Medical Clinic. I was an interpreter for the district for a couple months. Almost all school districts in Texas are bilingual K through 12. You have an option. I understand that probably finding those teachers here would be difficult, but it is really worth it to the hundreds and hundreds of Spanish kids that go to school in this district every day. And also, I led one of the largest nonprofits in Dallas for immigrants. We counseled hundreds of mothers. One of the best ways to give mothers a way to be empowered in the lives of their children so that the roles are not reversed, where the kid becomes the parent taking care of their parents and doing all of their applications. And I'm not about to cry, I'm just like nervous that I'm up here, sorry. The way that you don't reverse roles and have all kinds of family problems when these children become teenagers and they are expected to still be the parent's child. There is a authority shift that will happen when you expect your young child to do everything for you. And one of the ways that you can minimize that authority shift at a very young age is providing bilingual education. So if you are looking at anything for language academies, bilingual K through 12 education, I am your #1 proponent, and I am here as one person, but I am standing for the hundreds of Hispanic families that I talk to every single day and everybody who is driving daily to West Liberty. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Matthew Fleming, followed by Erica Peterson.
Hello, my name's Matthew Fleming, and I'm a parent of a proud third grade Shimmick Shark. First, I'd like to reference a memo that Mrs. Pilcher-Hayek sent to the board last month. It's criticisms, concerns, and real plea for data-driven analyses and decision-making, I think perfectly encapsulates the Shimmick community's thoughts on these proposed plans. So I suggest that you carefully review and reflect on the contents of that memo. This very organization, the school board and the district administration, imagined and built a network of small community-based schools, I should say neighborhood-based schools, in Iowa City. And what happened to that network? It developed schools that children and their families love. It built strong, supportive communities around these schools, and attracted devoted teachers and students and staff. And what else? It produced excellent educational outcomes. So in short, the system that you built is working. It's working for the very children and families you're tasked to serve. This proposed plan, a solution to a nebulous problem set, for example, is the main problem being solved for budgetary nature, or is it equitable class size? This plan, or plans, would degrade or wholly destroy these schools and their communities that this organization helped create and flourish over decades. Finally, this proposal, as we can best parse based on the limited communications from the organization, would seemingly only affect a subset of schools within the district, the wonderful small schools just discussed. These schools represent less than 10% of the total district school population. Well, the constituents of these schools, again, schools that are functioning well, are present in this room tonight. We're frustrated with the process surrounding these proposals and deeply concerned about the negative impacts they may pose. So I challenge you to serve these constituents as best you can and realize that the systemic solutions you seek do not lie in a plan that disproportionately involves so few schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Erica Peterson, followed by Megan Hansen.
Hi, I'm Erica Peterson, 14 Ridgewood Lane. My kids are in 3rd and 1st grade at Shimmick Elementary, and I have a toddler who I hope goes to Shimmick Elementary in a few years. I have just a couple points I wanted to make tonight, although I think I could probably speak to about 2 hours at this point. The information the district shared with families so far is wholly inadequate. I'm still talking to people today that had no idea of the real implications of this plan, and the real implications of this plan is that some of our schools may cease to exist as they are now. I've had conversations since the letter went out on September 3rd over and over, and people are not aware of the real implications of this plan, and that's a problem. The district needs to clearly communicate the implications of this plan so all families in the district have a chance to come here and make their voice heard, either or by email, whatever it may be. Making committees tonight and moving forward on this plan is severely problematic without doing so. I also want to note that these schools are, as been pointed out, important part of our communities, and more than just our families need to be involved. I've got a neighbor here. Every time I talk about it, people's jaw dropped. I am not a person with fancy numbers, but I'm going to assume there's economic impact to the whole community when you take an entire school offline. And so I think it's really important that this information is shared much more clearly than has been shared before. Frankly, the email that went out hid the ball, and I don't think people understood it. I also want you to know that I don't understand why we don't slow this process down. The Surgeon General's come out and talked about the impact of mental health on kids and also on parents. And I can speak on the behalf of many parents I know that have lost sleep this week since that email dropped and have shed tears since that email dropped. Unless you're saying you can't keep the lights on in these buildings, in which case we should have heard a clear message about that, then this needs to slow down. There's no reason we need to tell our kids their school's over, it's gone as of next year. If I had a kindergartner that I could say in 3rd grade is moving somewhere else, that's a much different and much more appropriate process if this is something that we need to do, which I have a lot of questions about. I finally just want to say, I started the Shimmick Environmental Club last year. It's been a club that's existed over the years at Shimmick. And I'm not saying this to tell you about its amazing potential or that Shimmick is amazing, but I do think it has amazing potential, and I do think Shimmick is amazing. But I'm saying that because at every single one of these elementary schools, there is a huge amount of parent investment of time and energy, and that's what makes these schools awesome. Our community and our parents come in and we invest that time, and by doing this, I think this plan has a real risk of de-investing that time, and I don't know of a way we can get it back. For example, I'm not sure how I can be at both of my kids' elementary schools for various activities, and I think you're gonna lose a lot of people in that disinvestment. But the other thing that I wanted to share, and I have lots of notes because I was nervous, in relation to that parent investment. First off, it's low cost. It has potential for serious impact. With the environmental club, kids would run up to me and ask me, when's the next meeting gonna be? What are we gonna do? And those are the things that mean a lot to our kids. And so instead of looking to bring people outside of our district in to solve our problem, we should be looking at the strengths within our community for solutions. We're brilliant, we care deeply, and we can solve big problems, but that begins with clear communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Megan Hansen, followed by Ross Nasser.
Hi, I'm Megan Hansen. I live at 3116 Anita Circle, Northeast. I'm a mom of 4, a 1st grader at Shimmick, and I have 3 more coming in over the next 3 years. The Iowa City Community Schools have been based on neighborhood schools since it was established, which has provided a destinations for families to settle and grow. While you consider the district the best in the universe, targeting the East Side schools is going to cripple the City High feeder system. There are already great disparities between the East Side and Liberty feeder schools. The affluent members of our community have already discussed transferring to private schools, homeschooling, or moving to communities where this initiative isn't targeted, thus creating a larger gap among the three school systems. We moved from the Clear Creek Amana District to be a part of the East Side Diversity and the established neighborhood school system. With this new proposal, my husband would potentially have to drop off at the Early Childhood Center, both paired elementary schools, before getting to City High himself. Or alternatively, my kids would have to sit on a bus that is already over an hour long. While I applaud your efforts of opening more space for early childhood education at each elementary school, as we know, research has shown early intervention optimizes the children's path to success. We just transitioned the sixth graders to the middle schools to increase preschool enrollment at our neighborhood schools. We haven't given any time for this initiative to unfold, nor is the construction done at the middle schools. The bottom line is this is about money. We are in this situation because of poor spending, coding, and vouchers. Liberty High School is the most inefficient, and projections have been wildly off, and now the East Side schools have to take the brunt of the financial losses, which is now reaching the level of our children. Enrollment and efficiency are two key factors. 400-person school would be more efficient and likely help class sizes, but what we don't know is how many families would leave the district and the direct impact of these families leaving. We haven't seen any cost-benefit analysis being provided of these proposals. What is next when these projections are way off? I think it's important to consider solutions at our district's current financial state. The district should try to solve financial decisions internally rather than externally impacting the families it serves. No family wants to be split and have to undergo so many transitions at a young age. Some solutions to consider include pairing grades within current elementary schools, assessing boundaries, looking at administrative staff, looking at teacher negotiated contracts. For example, 5 or 6 teaching periods in the secondary school system would take one prep away. Right now, a full-time teacher is teaching for 60% of the time and 40% prep or breaks. Every 6 teachers, you'd be able to reassign one teacher. It could be done district-wide and not directly on the east side. At these 3 comprehensive high schools, you could save $2.5 million on 50 teachers without impacting class sizes. We are one of the only districts in the state with this amount of prep time. Rather than dropping these proposed ideas, I think it would be more beneficial to look around and use the community you serve as a resource and ideas to help assess financial barriers and solutions. When you say you are all in for all kids, targeting specific neighborhood schools on the east side is unacceptable. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ross, followed by Chris Rundolph.
Hi, I'm Ross Nusser, and I was a Lincoln Lion, and my kids are Shimmick Sharks, and I wanted to thank you for letting us speak today. I'm not sure what information precipitated this that I assume happened this summer, but whatever it was, I feel like I just want to give all of you hugs and say, please calm down. Change, especially change with children, should be gradual and not rushed. And please allow this new middle school concept, which I believe will be a very good thing. Please allow it to play out before we enact greater change and radical change into our school system. Children need stability. These are still kids going through school right now who have been impacted by COVID. These are children who have not had as stable of an environment as the past decade. And I just want to further state what others and echo what others have said, which is that neighborhood schools in Iowa City are paramount to our community culture as a whole. And please don't take that away from us. And if you do, please give us a little bit more warning than next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Chris Rundolph, followed by Daniel Bissell.
Hi, my name is Chris Randolph. I live at 1433 Oaklawn Avenue. I didn't come prepared because I thought there would be a lot of speakers, which there are, but I decided that this was also a time that I could speak as well, because the importance of this has, rolled, and we're trying to figure this out. I feel like your details are not as clear as they should be. You start with saying that you want to group all the schools, but yet there is nothing in any of the information that you have stated that shows your schools are being grouped. We start with 4 East Side schools. You say 2 of them are going to go together and be paired. Then you say Shimmick. I listened to your last meeting. You have it so Shimmick is already pre-planned to be your preschool, your daycare all year, right? So you're not giving anybody time. You're not giving anybody clear direction on what you're doing. So if you could clarify everything that you're doing and how you're doing it, maybe people will start to listen a little more. Also, you only talk about pairing 2 schools again. What about the rest of the schools? There's no information on pairing those schools. So you're gonna have 2 schools that are not full elementary schools. You're gonna have the K through 2, and then you're gonna have the 3 through 5, only at 2 schools. You need to discuss more of what's gonna happen with the rest of the school district. Why is it the East Side? Why is it only Shimmick, Lincoln, Mann, and then Twain? There's been no information on any other school changing. That is something that needs to be shared to every parent. So it's not just the East Side that's getting to deal with this. So you'll actually have the rest of the community's input, because this is not impacting anyone else except the East Side schools for now. And then once this rolls out, is my kid gonna have to go to like 3 different schools in a year? So if I am deleted from Shimmick and I have to go to Mann for a year, and then I have to go to Lincoln the next year, like, where's the stability in my child's education? Where is my child's mental health? I'm still dealing with the rampance of COVID and trying to get my eldest child to fit into school because his social norms skills are not great from being in kindergarten and then being out of kindergarten, trying to do first grade online, then having to go to school at the same time in first grade at the end of first grade. So where's the mental health for those kids? Where's the stability on them? That's all I have.
Thank you. Next up, we have Daniel Bissell, followed by Mackenzie McCord.
Good evening. Excuse me. I'm Daniel Bissell. I reside at 826 Tranquil Bluff Trail. My son's currently a first grader at Lincoln Elementary, and my daughter will be a kindergartner there in a couple of years. I'd like to comment on the proposed elementary school realignment on tonight's agenda. I know many parents are here tonight to express many valid concerns about this proposal, but I want to bring to your attention something that might not initially be considered: the unintended consequences of complicating the transportation arrangements for students and families across the district. With the neighborhood schools model currently available to most students in the district, those students are able to utilize active modes of transportation, mostly walking and biking. Being able to walk or bike to school has been shown to have many benefits to the students themselves and the community at large. It promotes physical and mental health for those students, and those students show better academic performance. For the rest of the students, the options are typically a family car or a school bus if they're lucky. Many families have multiple students in school. If this proposal is fully implemented, imagine the logistical nightmare. Haggard parents now tasked with 2 or more drop-offs in the mornings and pickups in the afternoon. Overcrowded buses making 2 stops, 3 stops to drop off students, maybe more. I can see the tardy slips piling up already. It was already a struggle to staff enough qualified bus drivers with the current needs. Where are the additional staff and vehicles going to come from? And how much will that eat into the proposed savings? Transportation is currently the largest single contributor to greenhouse gas emissions nationwide. This proposal will make it impossible for most students to utilize the cleanest form of transportation available to them, their own 2 feet. The emissions associated with student transportation from buses and private vehicles will likely more than double with this proposal. The students of this district have already taken this body to task for its climate policies. Strides have been made in reducing the district emissions through energy efficiency in the buildings. The transportation emissions from this proposal threaten to undo that progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mackenzie McCord, followed by Tony Gatewood.
Hello, school board and administrators. All right, my name is Mackenzie McCord. I am a former school teacher and now a mother of 4 children that I raised with my husband, Justin. 2 of our children currently attend Shimmick Elementary, and the other 2 will be attending Shimmick in the coming years. I was born and raised in Iowa City. My 3 older sisters and I attended Shimmick Elementary, and we all graduated from City High. I went away for college in Dubuque, Iowa, and continued to reside in Dubuque, working in their public school district for 5 years. When Justin and I started our family, I knew that I wanted to get back to Iowa City and not only raise our kids in Iowa City's public schools, but a similar atmosphere that Shimmick provided to me as a child, and I think it has done just that for my children so far. I will also say becoming a teacher had almost everything to do with the impact my teachers and community had on me at Shimmick Elementary when I was a kid. What I learned and what I felt at Shimmick is something I wanted to instill at the school that I taught in Dubuque. Then when it came to my own children and family, I wanted them to actually experience Shimmick and be in that community. It is now upsetting to hear that Shimmick could potentially get reconfigured. I currently volunteer on the Shimmick's PTO board, which hosts many events for the families to come together. I also volunteer as one of the troop leaders for a Girl Scout troop that meets at Shimmick twice a month. That includes girls kindergarten through 5th grade. With this envisioned proposal, I am concerned for my children's mental health, my family's dynamic as a whole, and the lack of stability that this re-envisioning could bring to our family. I have a husband that travels a lot, so having multiple schools would be pretty hard to get my kids to school. I want to be a part of all my children's schools community, and thinking about one of the options being paired schools would just spread our family more thin. I'd like to bring to the table a structure that was taken away probably about 12 years ago. At Shimmick, there was shared grade level classrooms, 1st and 2nd grade together, 3rd and 4th, and 5th and 6th. Maybe this could be a model we go back to help with having more teachers being able to collaborate at grade level. I also remember the elementary schools having a language immersion program within the elementary schools for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And then it was taken away. I remember when I was in 4th grade, because I got to experience 1 year of it, and I still remember a lot from it. It was great. It's unsettling to me to know that we just moved our 6th graders to middle school who haven't been settled yet in a finished building to alleviate more space for our preschools at Shimmick and other schools in the district. And now we are talking about new projects that would move students around again. I also want to point out the lack of data and the transparency around these changes is just troubling. So I'm hoping that we can learn more tonight. These proposals brought forward and then being implemented in a short time period with lack of data and transparency on how it will positively impact our students and community as a whole. My family appreciates the time you put in being a member of the school board, and I know it's not an easy job, so thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tony Gatewood, followed by Rachel Gold.
Good evening. My name is Tony Gatewood, and I live on 3408 Muscatine Avenue. My wife and I, we have been in the community for around 25 years on and off. We just moved back from Florida. Another conversation for another time. We have 2 children. One goes to Southeast Middle School, and the other one goes to Lucas. I came here because, one, I like to be observant, and I like to find out like how power moves and who's most affected by choices by the powerful. I work for an organization called Servant Partners, and we do community organizing for and leadership development for the poor in the U.S. and around the world. I spent 2.5 weeks living in a slum village in Manila to understand how empowered the poor can be when you don't have anything. I'm at this meeting because I care about the poor, and I get all of the things that we're going to be discussing and a lot of the inconveniences. But what I know is that the poor have less choices than others. In fact, most of the people who could be affected by this are probably working a second or third shift right now. Right. And they have no agency to be able to be here, be on a microphone and communicate and to know what will happen for their kids. I get that. I get that this is concerning in neighborhoods, but I really want to know and be able to hear who are you going to be empowering with the decisions that are made, or those who might present, who are you empowering? Because I want to know where power moves. And I think that would be important for us as a community too. The other thing I want to share is that, like, I'm a part of an organization that wants to help empower those who are marginalized in our community and then in those different spaces. So to that, I challenge you to have a civil cup of coffee with me. It's not really a challenge, it's a welcome, and I will treat you to it. I want to hear from you, I want you to hear from me, and hopefully we can empower those who don't have the option. I wrote an article in my organization says, the poor serves you lunch on Sundays. And if you can imagine what that means is that while a lot of people find that, Sundays to be an hour for faithful, right, faith-filled activities, the poor don't have the option. But they're waiting for you to serve you. And what I'm saying is that, like, whatever we're doing with our kids, know that whatever gets decided, the poor are going to be waiting for you at Applebee's or, Two Dogs or right around. So help me understand what your decisions you're making and how it impacts the most marginalized, the least. And I'm not just talking about black and brown bodies, but even working class and hardworking class poor white folk as well. So keep that. I would love for you to keep that in mind as you guys continue to move forward, even folk in this room as well. That I hear the inconveniences. The poor don't have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rachel Gold, followed by Joel Berger.
Hi, my name is Rachel Gold. I live on Meadow Ridge Lane. I have one child at Shimmick. I wasn't originally planning to speak, but I decided to. I also have one child at Regina, and part of the reason I decided to stand up, I'm going to be completely honest about it because I don't think there's any point in, let's just get it out in the open. I took ESA funds for it. This is never something in my entire life that I imagined I would do, was take money from a public school system to go to private school. I did this because I was concerned about behavioral issues in her classroom and for her safety. And I also have 2 younger children. So you may be wondering at this point why I'm standing up here at all, or why my son is still at Shimmick. And the reason he's still at Shimmick is because I didn't want to lose access to that community. I didn't think this transition was in his best interest, but selfishly, I wanted to continue to be able to have that. And whatever Mr. Pasaric or the teachers think privately about the decision, many of them know I've made it, they have always met me respectfully and with concern, and that has really meant a lot to me. I was kind of an accidental homeschool parent because of the pandemic. I didn't realize how easy it would be. I'm not saying that teachers' jobs are easy because they're doing a different job. They're doing classroom management. I was working with my own children. But a lot of the time that my kids were in school, I felt like academically it was a footnote. You know, I wasn't there for the academics. This isn't because they're bad teachers, they're great teachers. But nobody stands a chance against me when it comes to my kids' academic, you know, I realized I could do it. So for me, what Shimmick really had to offer was that community. You know, I never appreciated how much that was gonna mean to me. I'm also a single parent during the week. My kid's father works in a different state, so because I have 4 kids, given their age spacing, there would be years where I would have 4 different drop-off points. My job starts at 8 in the morning, it ends at 5 in the evening. As you can imagine, that's pretty hard for me to drive around and get to 4 different buildings, and I do need to go to all 4 because I do need the VASP because I do need to work. I think the school district meets a lot of needs that you don't realize you're meeting, and so to some people they're even more important than the academics. The childcare, I went into the pandemic so mad that people expected teachers to be their childcare, and I came out with a completely different opinion. I appreciate how desperately people need that now, and what that means to people. I would say somebody was up here talking about who exactly are you empowering. I think you really missed an opportunity when you didn't ask me, people like me, why we chose to remove our kids. You can be disgusted with us and think that we're villains, but nobody really bothered to ask me why, with the exception of, again, probably Mr. Psarek. And I also think you're really missing an opportunity not asking other families, particularly those families who can't make it to a meeting because maybe they're working a second job, explaining to them what your goals are and asking them, is this worth it to you? Do you think the trade-off is worth it? Are you still gonna be able to get all your kids to school every day? And you know, do you care enough about these particular outcomes? I agree that the data hasn't been very presented. I don't think that it's been clearly organized. So I do hope that you take some more time to reach out to the community and try to learn what people's reactions are, especially the people who weren't able to make it. Thank you, I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Joel Berger, followed by Heather Bright.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Joel. I'm in the Mal Elementary area. I don't go myself, but I've got a 7-year-old that goes there, and we love the area. We love living there and being able to walk our kids to school, and as many others are speaking about in terms of having this community school. It's a beautiful thing. And that's why we moved into that area, and that's why we went, bought into that system, and absolutely aware that we're very lucky for that sort of experience. I guess a lot of the things I won't be talking about aren't necessarily covered by others, because loads of people have really covered it pretty well, but I just felt like you needed to hear a British voice. So I feel like first, these sort of things have actually been addressed before. As you guys know, I moved over in 2019, but in 2018 there was a really nice story written by a friend of mine about the fact that this was looked at before in 2010 or 2011, and then again in 2018 for slightly different reasons. I'm talking about the school pairing, as everyone else is as well, obviously, and it was looked at for, equalising free school lunches, and an incredibly appropriate thing to be looking at as balancing it. But that didn't go through for various different reasons, of course, because there was community pushback and realisations probably that, the Twain, so it was with Twain and Longfellow, in case I didn't say that. And that was because there was pushback from the community, and also a realization from the schools that neither school wanted that. Both wanted to keep their community schools. And as I say, that was for a really important reason, and it's appropriate. And one of the previous speakers totally, really eloquently put it, that it's important to support people poor on themselves and try to bring them up. And I'll go back onto that in a second, but importantly, this was done even before COVID was a thing. And again, people before me really eloquently put that many of our children have just come through an unprecedented time of unsettlement in their school period. And that's a really difficult thing to go through. And they're resilient kids, they're amazing, but we don't want to necessarily go and put them into even more challenges just when we can think that there are possibly other ways of looking at this. And I get that the subtext here is there are efficiency savings that need to be made, but this is possibly not the best way to be making them. And one thing to say on that is really, so far, the presentations and the other slides that have been put online, they've basically been sales pitches, to be honest. I don't mean that in a derogatory, but it's clearly derogatory, okay. But the point is, they literally said, and they said advantages for every single thing. They didn't actually list in a balanced way what's the positives and negatives of this approach. And so that really kind of worries me as a parent and just as a community member in general, that I'd rather there was a genuinely kind of balanced approach to actually think about these things and think, okay, here's actually the negatives. And I'm glad seeing this forum now because you're listening and that's great. And there's a lot of people here. So clearly now we're having a balanced approach, but I think it's important not to just sell this to the community. And finally, really, as a previous speaker said, I really do think it's incredibly important to support people poorer than ourselves. And we need to think of the best ways that we can serve people. And it's not clear that this would be that. And I don't think we should be focused on kind of bringing people up and figuring out the best way we can support other communities that are in need, whether it's increasing our taxes because we have more money or anything like that. Whatever those approaches are, that's appropriate, that we can then support others. But we should be lifting them up rather than breaking our communities down, theirs and Mars. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Heather Bright.
Hi, my name's Heather Bright. My kids have gone to Shimmick. They are now 20, 18, and 15, two of which now go to the University of Iowa, and one that is at City High as a sophomore. So we do not actively have children in Shimmick. However, we have been community members who have had children in the ICCSD district for a long time. And so I wanted to address the fact that this is not the first time I've heard this conversation. In fact, I've heard this brought up, I think this is the third time I've heard this brought up about pre-K to 2 and then 3 to 6, switching them off between schools. So I wrote myself some notes. I want to stay on track. So like I said, it's not the first time I've heard this and heard about either moving boundary lines or redistricting / envisioning the whole thing has been proposed. My children, like I said, attended Shimmick, and one of the things that happened to us at one point in all of this is that busing got cut. And we used to get busing for our children from where we lived, and then it got cut because we were 0.3 miles outside of the line. And we live on Linder Road. I mean, a 5-year-old can't walk to school on Linder Road. We were allowed to pay for that if we wanted to. We opted to drive them. But what this ultimately looks like to me is it comes down to budget, is what is where the rubber's gonna hit the road on this. I mean, I appreciate having your kids going to one school or another, but ultimately, I remember every time this has come up, what it comes down to is money. And what it comes down to is when you do something like this, where you go pre-K to 1 and 2 to 5, which is what it'll be now, the factor that hits it and stops it is usually busing. And that's where it comes into a problem, is because now you have to change all your routes. Now you have to add more busing. This is what happened the last time and why we actually have a whole new bus system. And I mean, it's sometimes hard to remember all this when you don't follow it for a long time, but you have to keep following the track of the budget and how this impacts upon the community. So then every single time, it always seems to come back to, how is the community going to financially support this? And that's the thing that kind of bothers me about it, is because we just did this massive bond, massive, and we just redid all these schools to try to help all of this. And now here we are again. And I feel like it always seems to happen that we get introduced with an idea that makes everybody go, ah, and freak out. And then usually how I've noticed is an idea gets introduced, then we'll get something that feels a little bit better, and then we'll fall back to a place that's okay, and it usually requires that we have to pay a bond again. So I'm trying to make sure that we're just paying attention to the budget in this, because I think that's really ultimately where the rubber's gonna hit the road. And so I absolutely feel, because I don't have little kids anymore, but I absolutely feel for people that are gonna have to drive their kindergartner and their 4th grader, and they're like, how am I gonna pick this up? And I guess Jenny will pick up this person and I'll pick up that person. And that is stressful, but also ultimately what comes down to it is, I think, how financially are we going to do this? And is it going to fall again on the community to do another bond or something like that? So that's the part I wanted to address. I hope that's helpful. Okay.
Thank you. That concludes our community comment. Next up is the agenda approval for tonight. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the agenda for this evening.
Seconded.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Secretary Colvin, I'm a yes.
Thank you, Director Abraham.
Oh, wait, it showed up on my iPad.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, do any of the directors who reviewed the bills have any questions? Hearing none, are there any items that directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion regarding tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Well, I'm sorry. I just asked for a motion.
Oh, okay.
I
Good
move
point.
we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is our policy review, and it is the 100 series policy. Director Finch, do you have any comments? I know you chair policy and governance.
There were no, thank you, President Mullen. There were no changes. I did want to point out, Director Lingo brought up the bullying and harassment policy with some questions about it. So in addition to it applying to staff and students, the bullying and harassment policy also applies to volunteers, so that would include the board. So I wanted to bring that up at the board table just to see if there were any directors who had any questions about that before we approved it tonight. Okay. All right. Otherwise, I just wanted to inform board members of that, and otherwise there were no changes.
Thank you. Any of the directors have any additional comments, questions? All right. That takes us to tonight's presentation, elementary configuration. Superintendent Degner, I will turn it over to you to start us off.
All right, thanks, President Mullen. I'm going to make some comments here. They are prepared remarks, so apologies for me staring at my screen while I read them to you, but Ms. Proctor will be coming up and she'll deliver the presentation here, kind of concluding these remarks. So first wanted to say good evening and thank you for all showing up this evening and advocating for your schools and communities. That's what gives me great pride about serving in this community. Tonight, I wanted to take some time explaining why we're considering these options and asking for our community to do the same. We're in this situation because of years of chronic underfunding of public education. Everyone here tonight understands the benefits of public education and the power of our schools. So of course, I appreciate the questions and empathize with your concern. They are warranted and deserve answers. While disagreement may be inevitable, I want to remind us that every time we start fighting with each other and criticizing each other, those that are determined to divide us have accomplished their goals because we're now focused on that. I do not want that to happen to our community. And I'm hopeful that we'll stay focused on learning, questioning, and hearing perspectives different from our own to inspire progress for our district. Our school district budget has seen a series of reductions over the past several years. Most recently, last year, we reduced this year's budget by $5.5 million. This coming year, we're projecting another $2.5 million reduction. However, this is only a projection as we cannot determine our budget until we know the variables of enrollment this school year in October and what comes in the way of supplemental state aid after the first of the year. This picture could improve or get worse depending on those two factors. The board and administrative team discussed these concepts as a follow-up to our budget reduction conversations last year, and we've been working from this assumption. In hindsight, this working assumption of ours was not made clear to all of you. Our reality is that we have to look for ways to serve our students with fewer resources and be as effective as possible with the ones we have. As with any challenge put in front of us, we want to make sure that the solutions are good for our students and our community. We brought these ideas to the board and you as a way to mitigate the impact of declining resources and the belief that we have an opportunity to benefit our students. Some may produce savings, and others may help us use the dollars we have more effectively, but we have to ensure that we are being as smart and responsible as we can with the resources available to create great experiences for our students. The 18-section concept is not something that our district's attempting to achieve across the board or at any expense. Rather, it's an idea for us to work towards to better utilize our teaching resources effectively. Paired schools, academy schools, and preschool centers are ways to potentially get closer to that type of model. No one is suggesting that we completely close several schools to achieve this. In fact, the goal is to avoid that type of scenario. If we do not look towards ideas such as these or other innovative solutions, we'll be left to handle all reductions through our budget process, which has a much smaller window of time, and that window continues to get smaller as supplemental state aid is often not set in a timely fashion. Doing nothing and the consequences of that approach result in more familiar outcomes like complete school closures, massive redistricting, untenable class sizes, fewer student programs, transportation reductions, and letting go of staff members. Our district has maintained two commitments as we work through these reductions in the past several years: to not cut student programs and to not lay off staff members. We're reaching a point that those commitments would be very difficult to maintain. We're trying to avoid a situation where the only solutions we have left at our disposal are class sizes that no parent would want their child in, or to completely close another school. There have been concerns brought to us about the weighted resource allocation model and the ability to keep the philosophies of our boundary work in place. I want to be clear that we do not believe in undoing this work, but to maintain or restore either one of these, we must examine ways to use our resources of that work, or that work will continue to be threatened. Finally, some of you have asked for data surrounding these concepts and how they'll save us money, help us more effectively use the resources we have, and improve our student experience. This is what our team will research and present to the committee and back to the board and community throughout the fall. Again, some of the proposals may prove beneficial, some may not, and there may be some new ideas, but this is our chance to study them together. I feel as if we're doing exactly what the community's previously asked to do, to transparently and authentically engage in a process with you rather than do something to you with a predetermined solution that you have no voice in. I regret that our proposed timeline may have disrupted and confused the spirit of this and has been received as if it was in fact a predetermined solution. The timeline can and likely will change based on the work and findings of the committee. I would remind everyone there's been no recommendation to implement any of the suggested ideas and no board vote. We're in the beginning stages of this work, and I cannot think of a more transparent way than forming a committee at the start of the school year and working through this together alongside our community. Presenting a fully articulated plan and trying to sell it to you would be the opposite of that. That's not what this is. This is simply an opportunity for us to come together as a community and explore what makes the most sense for our district. Once again, thank you for coming. I truly believe we have an opportunity to find innovative solutions in the face of challenges. The time is now for us to come together and ensure that future Iowa City students receive the same excellent education that our current students are receiving. I am so thankful to serve in a place that is invested in doing the right things for our students. So next, what we're gonna spend some time doing is the two work sessions that we did have over the summer. This is somewhat of a combo of those presentations, and as we explored those ideas and talked about them together, and then we'll wrap up tonight with really what was our one takeaway action item was to form a committee and to look at these potential ideas together. Eliza will talk to you a little bit about what we're thinking for the makeup of that committee and give you guys a chance to provide input on if that matches your expectations or if there's anyone else you'd like us to include.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. All right. Thank you, Superintendent Degner. The following presentation, as he alluded to, is a combination of the last two presentations that we provided during board work sessions in July and August. To reiterate the remarks made by Superintendent Degner, this is just a starting point to a larger conversation that we would like to engage in with our community. Our goal is to find solutions that use our resources more effectively and provide innovative experiences for our students. Tonight, we're going to give an overview of the following 5 topics. You've probably heard a little bit about exploring 18-section schools. We want to explain what that is. We're going to talk about what a paired school is. We will explore academy schools, preschool centers, and discuss timeline and potential next steps. right. As Superintendent Degner stated, our immediate goal is not to try to get to 16 buildings of 18 sections. However, we need to begin the work to find a way to more efficiently and effectively use the resources that we have. A move towards 18 sections would help to increase our efficiency at the elementary level and would likely positively impact class size ranges at both our elementaries and our secondary levels. So if you see this 18 sections, the right side talks about what the impacts this could have on our budget. We'd have more efficient use of teaching staff, could potentially reallocate staff to improve class sizes. We would be reducing in-district travel costs or time for shared staff, potential increased enrollment due to early childhood and academy school offerings, a reduction in our variance of sizes and classes. We would have an evaluation of transportation costs and opportunities to restore and maintain the RAM principles that we have established in this community. Oh goodness, sorry, let me go so you guys can see the whole thing. There we go. So as we look at this slide, this just demonstrates the raw math around 18 sections and outlines some of the potential advantages that we could see if we were to get closer to that. So the advantages is we would have more equitable opportunities for our students. Again, more consistent class sizes. We would be using our buildings more efficiently. We would have standardized district-wide costs per student, more consistent staffing and scheduling, increased collaboration amongst teachers, the efficient use of support staff, dedicated specials teachers. If you're familiar now, you may have several specials teachers that provide arts, music, or PE to our students across the district. And again, another opportunity to restore and maintain our RAM principles. So we do understand that this visual may have caused immediate reaction that implied that our suggestion was to completely close 4 elementary schools, and for that we deeply apologize. Our intent for this slide is to illustrate the inefficiencies that we currently have at the elementary level and just afford us the opportunity to engage together as a community to find reasonable and innovative solutions. So these next 2 slides, just for full disclosure, they have the exact same information on them. They are just ordered differently so that you can see based off of enrollment. So I will just show that second slide, same exact information. All right, these data show our current elementary enrollment by location, as well as the number of classroom sections and the average classroom size that we have across our district. You can see that the average class size ranges from 18 to 24. However, it's also important to remember that an average is just that, an average. And so to get that, we do have a number of sections in our elementaries that are at 30, 31, or even 33. On an upcoming slide, we will show the data that demonstrates the class range per grade level. As the board is well aware, when we are exploring policy, change, school improvement efforts, we often look to our surrounding districts that make up our UEN, or Urban Education Network. This slide just illustrates how elementary school configurations compare to other like districts. These numbers demonstrate our total enrollment in K-5, the number of elementary schools that we have, as well as the average elementary size, just in those comparables with the UEN as we start to think about how we might think about how we're providing education to our students a little bit differently. Another reason that we feel that it is extremely important to engage in this work as an entire community is because of the potential impacts that it have on all of us. The data on this slide demonstrate our current class size ranges here, next to those that we could start to achieve if we use our resources in a more efficient way. So here, this is where we currently are, and these would be some of our re-envisioned goals. As you can see, we have a wide range in many of our grade levels. Through the re-envisioning process, we hope that we would begin to close that range. You can see that across as a district, we have a section of 14
while we also have sections of 33 students. Even in the same grade level, we have a wide range of 14 to 26, or even 15 to 28. Through this work, we are hoping that that's an impact that we would be able to make district-wide. All right, so we've started to field some questions, and I heard this at community comment earlier this evening around why we are centering this conversation around the East Side schools. The intent of this slide is to demonstrate why the East Side is a starting point for this conversation. Full disclosure, East Sider since birth. I see many of my former City High classmates, Longfellow Longhorns, and we are East Side parents of an elementary child and a new middle schooler as well, so I understand where you're coming from. This table shows that we have 9 elementary schools that feed into Southeast and City High. If we were to do the simple math, we are having an average of 283 students in each of our East Side elementary schools. If we look to the north side of the district, we have 5 buildings that feed into North Central and Liberty High School. That would give us an average of 389 students per building. And then to our friends on the west side of town, there are 6 elementary schools that feed into Northwest and West High School with an average school size of 407 students. So that is why this conversation is starting on the east side, is we have the most attendant centers that serve our students that feed into City High School and the lowest average per building. If I'm making you guys seasick with the scrolling, just ask me to slow down. These next 3 slides are probably what you guys want to hear more about. And these are the 3 ideas that we are wanting a committee to explore. So paired schools. First off, we'd like to state that it's much easier to grasp the idea of a paired school when we actually use numbers to illustrate it. And so by no means are we making a specific recommendation, or have we made a specific recommendation that Lincoln and Man would be the schools that we want to pair. You can see that we currently have 20 FTE. FTE is an abbreviation for full-time equivalency, like a full-time teacher. So we have 20 classroom teachers currently between Man and Lincoln Elementary. If we were to have these buildings paired, we would have the 9 and 8, which would make 17 FTE. Now, what we would like the committee to do is to dig into a potential increase in transportation. Just as a previous community commenter said, what would transportation costs look like for this? What would be the benefits if we moved to a paired school? What would be the challenges? What would the structure of the day look like? Would it be reasonable that school could start at the same time for both schools? Would we need to think about if there was an alternate time for the day to start? And any other details to determine if this is a need that our community wants to meet this way. So that would be one option that we would ask the committee to start to explore. The next exploration would be an academy school. So academy schools are public schools that offer special instruction and programs not available elsewhere. They're designated to attract a more diverse student population throughout our school district. Students enroll through an application process based on program interest. Some examples that are out, in surrounding communities are School for the Performing Arts, or World Language or a Language Immersion School, leadership academies, or STEM or STEAM academies. So the advantages of potentially exploring academy schools would be a specialized curriculum with focused programs. We could have more diverse learning environments. Students and families would have a choice to elect into a school like this. We would have more innovative teaching methods, consistent class sizes, and we're able to maximize our building capacity. So with this model, we would ask the committee to determine if it's something that we want to move forward with in our community. In order to do so, we would engage in public forums to determine the most desired focus of the school, the most appropriate location, potential impacts on our budget, what would transportation look like, and begin the exploration process to see if there's an appetite for academy schools in our district. Lastly, we wanted to bring the idea of an early childhood center to the committee to examine the desire and the need for more expanded early childhood offerings. Last year, we conducted a survey as we were looking to expand our preschool offerings about early childhood needs and desires, and the results were overwhelmingly in support of full day and extended day childcare and preschool for our 3 and 4-year-old children. This center, what I want to make sure that everyone understands, we are not looking to replace our current preschool programs that we just expanded into every school. That is not the goal of this. This is just to offer another opportunity that would have extended hours, so families would be able to drop their young children off as early as 7:30, and pick them up extended hours, 6 p.m. Those are things that we would like this committee to explore and to see if that is something that we think that we could achieve to support the needs here in Iowa City. The timeline. So this proposed timeline was absolutely just that, a proposal, an idea of where we could consider starting. As Superintendent Degner mentioned, our budgeting timelines rely on outside factors, our enrollment, SSA, that we do not have any ability to control when the timeline those are set on. Therefore, we felt the need to bring a potential starting point. One very large piece that we will ask the committee to do is to create much more detailed timelines with each of the proposed ideas, if those are the ideas that we decide to embark on it together as a community. What I do know that we are 100% committed to is that gathering feedback and working together as a committee. I said committee, I meant community, sorry. So here are our next steps. Our next step is to form a committee to explore for future elementary options. We would want to form subgroups to focus on each of those 3 areas and explore if there's more ideas that our community members may have that they would like us to explore. Develop detailed timelines for each subgroup, gather feedback from the community, research and visit some of the academies or early childhood centers if those are ones that we continue to go down that road, and provide regular and frequent reports to the board and the community with status updates. So lastly, new piece of information is we wanted to provide what we are thinking and like your feedback on our committee. And so we are currently working with elementary principals to start to get recommendations for committee members. So we are starting to think that our committee would look like school board representatives, district level administrators who will help facilitate the larger committee and the subcommittee, educators from each of our elementary schools, parents and guardians from 10 of the elementary schools, including East Side representation, as well as West Side and North Liberty schools. And there's a possibility that subcommittees will determine that different or more representation might be necessary on their committee, which may result in expanding that group. As much as we would want to include everybody, that would be really hard for us to be able to dig into the work. So I want to explain what the responsibility of the committee is and the responsibilities and roles of each of those committee members. So the roles and responsibility of the committee members would be to attend each committee and subcommittee meeting, likely monthly or more frequently, and those would be after school hours. The responsibility would be to report back to their school community on the committee's work. So whatever regular channels a building had, when I was a building principal, typically it was my PTO or PTA that we would invite families in to come and gather feedback. We would have staff meetings, newsletters, frequent communications from our committee so that our constituents around the community knew what we were working on. As well as extremely important is to gather feedback from that school community to make sure all of those voices are heard and bring that back to our larger committee. The responsibilities of the entire committee would be to analyze and review the data from our district administrative team. Whatever the committee wants us to provide, we would provide the data. Explore the 3 different configurations: pairing, academies, early childhood center, and most importantly, explore if there are other configurations that make sense for our community. We are truly open to other ideas that our committee may come to us with. Gather feedback from individual school communities, as well as gather feedback from the entire school community. For example, our secondary schools, our middle schools, by listening posts, public forums. If we think back to FMP, 1.0, and we had those public community forums where people came and we problem solved. We would like to engage in that similar process for this. Collaborate with community partners to guide our conversations. We would provide very frequent updates to the school board and the community, and most importantly, ensure that any recommendations that we bring to the board meet the 2 criteria, that we are effectively using our resources and providing innovative experiences for our students. Questions?
Thank you, Director Proctor. I would open it up for board members who have questions.
I'm just going to jump right in. Thanks, Eliza. I appreciate
You're
that. I know it was a lot to try and summarize from previous meetings, but I appreciate you doing that for the benefit of everyone that's here. And Matt, I appreciate your comments at the beginning. I want to back up a little bit because I and President Malone did go to different schools, different community groups in 2018 and talked about paired schools and gave presentations at the time and talked through some of the pros and cons. And that was some of the worst time I've ever spent on the board doing that work because it's hard. And if I could put a bubble over the Shimmick community and protect them from everything, we would, but we can't. We have to step back and figure out what's going to be the best thing we can do for our entire district. And Superintendent Degner did talk about, and it was a bit doom and gloom of bad funding and things like that. And I don't like to just point out the negatives, but it's a very real place we're in. And so we owe it to our entire district to look at things differently than what we're doing now. Because I can tell you, status quo will get us in trouble. We're already in trouble, but it will be worse. So we have to do something. To that end, we are open to all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Right? So I want to make sure that when we're taking a step back and saying, why are we doing this work? It is to look at the whole district. And I did kind of have to push back because people had commented that we're only affecting a small subset of schools. That is not true. Go talk to some teachers and some parents at some of the larger schools that have class sizes that are untenable, and they will tell you, please do something about our inefficient schools to help us out. This will have positive impacts across the district. How we get to that point, yes, we need to figure out what's going to be the most positive for the most people. There are going to be very personal pain points for people. I get it. I know when my kids started in elementary school, 2 years in, that we were told they're building a new school and my kids have to move. That really sucked. I hated it. It was very personal to me that my kids had to change schools. So I really feel that personal pain point. And it's a short-term pain point. And we're trying to find real, lasting, long-term success for our district. And unfortunately, that's going to cause some short-term pain points. Some of the things I would like to just kind of throw out as maybe some direction from my side. I do think the points of looking at shared grades, that's an idea that could be another thing we can, check out. I think most of us here don't like to close schools. I'd be really leery of, and let's be honest, if we take a school and turn it into an academy school, it's closing a school, right? It is. And so that's probably a little farther down on my list of things I would like to look at. Paired schools is different that way. It keeps schools open. Yes, it adds an additional transition. Yes, it adds complexities for parents getting their kids to school. Those are all the things that the committee and the admin team would have to figure out. Correct. But it does avoid a very negative thing of closing schools. So that I really would put a lot of effort in there. And we do need to look at boundaries again. We have that as a tool that we can do, and it will have very specific individual in the moment pain points for people if we change their boundary to a different school. But again, it avoids closures if we can do it properly. So I'd like to make sure that that is part of the entire conversation. I have a whole lot of notes that everybody talked about. So all of the points that people brought up are things that the committees need to be thinking about. The transportation piece, just the marginalized folks. I think that's a great question. How are we impacting different groups negatively in different ways or positively in different ways? Because we don't want to do that either, right? We need to try and lift everybody up, but we, again, have to think about the whole district as a whole. That's probably enough of me rambling, so I'm going to let you start.
I thought it was pretty good there, Sean, actually. I just want to make, I think, a couple of points here. One, I want to reflect one thing that Sean said very clearly. We are not making these considerations because it's a bright idea that this district is trying to pursue. We are making these considerations because the vision of neighborhood schools available to a community generally and sustainably is not a vision this legislature agrees with anymore. They don't want that kind of a public school system in this community or any other community. So if we're going to maintain our vision of an elementary school, of a neighborhood schools, which I enjoyed, my family enjoyed. We lived 2 blocks from Longfellow most of the time when our kids were in elementary school, Southeast and City High. Our kids benefited hugely, as most of you have described, from the availability of a neighborhood school. I very much want to maintain that as best we can. Our task is to figure out how to do that in the face of the hostility of the majority party in the legislature now to that concept. In working through this problem, I'm referring to this board's board goals, which we set out in the front of our agenda. And I would plead and ask that all of you, which I'm just delighted to see are still here, all of you to join with us. We say that we will be accountable to the public and especially to our students. That's maybe perhaps our most important goal. And along with that, we say to get there, we will act in good faith and assume positive intent with a focus on the best interest of students. Those are 2 values that we try to implement among ourselves, and I hope you will join with us as we work through these issues over the next several months. As Eliza and Sean have pointed out, this is a process. It is not a decision or a ratification of a decision. This is definitely a process. And I hope all of you and others in the community will work together in partnership with us as we work ourselves through a different way, or finding different ways to maintain a neighborhood school, public school system in the face of the hostility of the funders in the state. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll begin by reiterating that we are not considering these proposals because we somehow think we're great at designing schools and we have all these new ideas that we want to push on the community. We're considering them out of necessity. And we've all spent the last 2 years on this board cutting the budget out of necessity. We cut 16 million one year, we cut 8 million last year. We're looking at 2.5 million in cuts. The demographer's report shows a continuing trend of declining enrollment coupled with a stagnant or declining expectation of funding from Des Moines. So we are not getting any more money anytime soon, and we are going to be losing money. And so we have to look at the budget and be smart about it. Otherwise, things are going to get real bad. And so the whole reason that we are revisioning our elementary schools is out of necessity. But as I said, I think at our meeting back in July, I'm optimistic and excited about this because while we have to do something, there is some potential to do some really great things and make improvements to the district that also save money. And I think just like Director Eastham and just like Director Eystone, I went to Mann. I walked 2 blocks to that school. I lived in the neighborhood school. When my husband and I moved back, the very first place we looked to buy a house was Mann. I really wanted that experience for my kids, so I just completely understand how important and special that is. I also, like Director Eystone, was a victim of the reboundering and had to shift elementary schools after my kids were there. I think all 7 of us could share similar stories. So it's not that we're not sympathetic or that we don't understand the very real disruptions that these types of changes cause. I think we all very much do understand them. And if we could avoid them, we would love to. But I don't see us in a position where we can do that. I wanted to address something that has been circulating in the community, that we are trying to dismantle, disengage, or move away from the RAM through this process, which I think is untrue and unfair. If anything, the reason that I am interested in revisioning our elementary schools is so that we can save our RAM and we can strengthen and build it. And I think that there are some really good data points and examples of how that would work. If, Eliza, could you go to slide 10? And to be clear, slide 10, it's based on current data, correct? Like if we would have paired Lincoln and Mann this year,
Yeah.
these are the changes that we would have seen. And what we see is that we would net 3 full-time teachers. We would save those teachers, and they could be redeployed elsewhere. And why that's important is if you go back, and I know we don't have it in the slide deck, but there is a slide deck from the February 13th, 2024 Financial Oversight Committee meeting where we break out the costs of per pupil expenditures per elementary schools. And perhaps the board members remember that because at the time we were talking about Hills, and Hills was way up there at $7,022 per student. And I think the average district cost per pupil was right around $5,000, $4,900. If you go back and you look at that slide, the schools that we're talking about, Shimmick, Lincoln, well, let's leave Shimmick out, but Lincoln and Mann on that pairing, their per pupil expenditures, Mann is $5,918, and Lincoln is $5,514 per student. So it's well above the average cost of what it costs to educate a kid in our district. And what's concerning is that both of those schools, it's costing more to educate kids there than our Group 1 schools, than our RAM 1 schools. So under RAM, right, we're supposed to be sending more resources towards our most needed kids. But and Lincoln and Mann are both Group 3 schools. They're more of our privileged schools. And so what we're actually doing is we're spending, because of these inefficiencies, we're spending more money on our Group 3 schools, on our privileged schools, than we are on our Group 1 schools, our underprivileged or schools more in need. And we're doing that because of these inefficiencies. And if we were to pair Lincoln and Mann, we would first of all reduce the per pupil expenditure at those schools. Then we would free up 3 full-time teachers that we could then deploy to Weber, Horn, Alexander, Hoover, or Wood, which are all of our Group 1 schools. But as long as we tie up our staff and we don't make it efficient, we are sending resources to the wrong schools. We are sending resources to our Group 3 schools who are not the schools in need of the most. And so that's why I think and why I am interested in continuing this discussion about certainly pairing the schools, is because that's what the district has committed itself to is the RAM, and recognizing that not all schools are equal, but we don't have the money to support all schools equally, and we have tight budgets. And so to me, it's really important that we're sending the money and being and realizing cost savings so that we can pass it on to the schools that need it the most. And I think that was probably like way too in the weeds and too much data and stuff. But those are some of the numbers. You know, we've been asked, what's the data? What's driving this? What are the justifications? To me, those are some of the numbers that drive and justify the importance at looking at these paired students. It's not to do away with the RAM. It's in fact to protect, maintain, and strengthen the RAM.
I will start off by thanking everyone for coming tonight and spending this time with us, listening and sharing your thoughts. I will always also say that my bar is pretty low, and I just want to say that I've been on this board for 7 years, and of those 7 years, I have been part of a board for 5 years that have had to make some really tough decisions that sometimes brought out just as many people, or we received just as many emails. And I especially want to thank those who have emailed, text, for being civil and respectful and being willing to engage in a dialogue. So thank you for that. I mean, that's appreciated, especially for me, because some years were tougher when we had to make decisions than others. So thank you for that. I won't reiterate a lot of what other directors have already said. My questions are mainly or comments, as we start thinking about the committee makeup. I would hope that we can consider, I don't know if I heard just community members, not necessarily parents, not necessarily people with ties to our schools, but they are taxpayers. And I think that's an important voice to consider, as well as some of our partners that most likely we will have to partner with. Neighborhood Center of Johnson County, Champions. I believe Coraville or North Liberty may also be providing some of our before and after school programs.
Yep, absolutely.
That would be very helpful. And I know we will have educators from buildings, but we can't have every single educator. So possibly considering someone from our teachers union. That might be helpful, and not necessarily the same person.
I forgot to say his name, but yes, he will be a part of the process as well.
Because I think it's important that we make sure we have a variety of voices. Yep. And I just asked if anyone is listening or in this room selected to be on the committee, be willing to come in with an open mind and share some of the great questions that's been shared to us via email that I've had in conversations with people, but also be willing to engage in the process so that we don't have to make tough decisions down the road. I mean, this year, I think by far was the toughest. I'm done in 2025, November. I say if I keep saying it publicly, it will happen. But November 2025, I want to get to that point without having to close another school. That was devastating, and it still bothers a lot of us that had to make that vote. The amount of stress and tears that we sometimes still experience just living through that, we don't want to see again. So I really want us to approach this situation and trying to find the best solutions. And I will echo what Director Eystone said. My immediate sort of views may not lend to academies, not necessarily saying don't explore it, because I want us to explore everything. But I would also like to see just feedback from some of our building principals on what their thoughts are about pairing schools across the district. I mean, I've talked to a couple of them. Some of them are really excited. I don't know if that's because they've talked to their teachers or their families. Some are really excited in watching this discussion. So I would just implore us to make sure we stay engaged with them as well.
Thank you, President Malone. And just to address a couple of the things that you brought up about that committee make, if that's allowed, we do have the plans to do some public forums because we know that when we send surveys out, it likely just ends with our immediate school community. So we do want to revert back to some of the practices we had in the past where we got full community input because you're correct, is everybody's taxpayer dollars, and we want to make sure that we're meeting those needs as well. And then we know that we need, another point on here was working with community partners. Our neighborhood centers of Johnson County have been really great for us, so we'll continue to partner with them on this work and other agencies that can help support the work moving forward as well. So thank you. And again, we are open to more ideas. These were 3 that we had started as a starting point, and if there are other ideas, and Director Eystone had given some that we had started to think about as well, and we're going to continue to explore. Just want the committee's work the committee to be a part of that work with us.
Well, I don't have much to add without being super redundant, but probably the biggest takeaway I hope that we all hear is that this is a process that it came across, and that must have been in the way it was presented, that we'd already made some decisions or was already decided what we're going to do, and that's very far from the truth. You know, we really are just starting the process. I appreciate very much Director Eystone's comment that the academy school or the preschool center, I don't know if you said preschool center too, but really that's in essence closing a school. And maybe that's why those ideas were a little harder for me to think about, but I do want to keep an open mind on those. But it does feel like closing a school when you do that. That's what it might be. So I don't have any other comments that haven't already been said. I appreciate the verbal abilities of all my fellow directors.
I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and sharing your feelings and also all of the emails. I didn't get a chance to respond to all of the emails, but I think what's clear is that our elementary schools are absolutely foundational to the families and our neighborhoods and our communities. And I think that's something that this district can really be proud of. And it's a testament to what our teachers and staff are doing with our students every single day. And so it really warms my heart to hear all of your testimonies. I don't know yet how I feel about all of these proposals, but I am coming to it with an open mind because I know that it is important for us to be proactive rather than reactive, because if we are faced with another set of budget cuts, what we will be looking at is programming and personnel and larger class sizes and possibly no longer having RAM. And these are all also very foundational to our schools. I hear what you are saying. We can't look at these small elementaries in a silo when we are thinking about the City High feeder pattern. The Southeast Middle School being the second largest school in our district. I think it's the largest middle school in our state. And it's currently a school in need of improvement. City High being the largest in our district, with, I believe, the highest FRL of all of our 3 comprehensive high schools. And the challenges with the spaces in that older building. So I do want to remind us to, be mindful of those facts as well. We're not just talking about these smaller elementaries. We are talking about an entire feeder pattern, and that we listen to understand. Again, to reiterate what my colleagues have said, this is a process. Nothing has been decided. We really want you to stay engaged because we need to work together as a community to come up with creative solutions to this. For example, please, thank you for sharing the idea about the whole grade sharing and other things like that. I think that is all I had to say. Again, thank you. I'm going to remain open-minded to this because I know how important it is for us to find solutions.
Well, looks like it's my turn. So I'm the ed policy person. That's what I like to do. It's what I like to read in my spare time. Superintendent Degner, unfortunately or unfortunately for him, usually gets papers sent in his email at least once or twice a week. But one of the things that's going on in the ed policy world, especially in K-12 finance, is this projected enrollment cliff. Birth rates in the United States have been going down for 12 consecutive years. When you look at the state of Iowa, it's down since 2014. Between 2014 and 2022, it has dropped 11.7%. And what this means is when you look at the census data, by the time my youngest child gets ready for kindergarten in 5 years, it'll be about a 15.5% drop in school-age children statewide. So when we're watching what's going on throughout the state right now, especially at rural schools that we see keep switching over to the 4-day week, that is partly what's going on. Johnson County is relatively insulated, but it still shows about a 4.8% drop in students over the next 5 years in Johnson County. Right now, enrollment in our district is just above, K-5 enrollment is just above 2014 levels. And when you look at the state supplemental aid in 2014, we are on average receiving $378 less per student than we did in 2014. So I am very happy that we're taking some proactive approaches and looking at this because there are some things down the road that if we don't address it now, it will get hairy, and it's going to get hairy throughout the state. I'm pro-public education all the way, but even when we look around districts nearby, where we see what looks like tremendous housing growth, the enrollment from year to year is stagnant. It's usually, and that's the way it's going. So I'm happy for the proactive approach on this. What it looks like is the outcome. We'll see. Regarding academy schools, one that you may want to look at, and this would save a neighborhood school from potentially closing, is having a school within a school. Specifically, and I'm not necessarily saying this is a good one to use, but the Montessori school at Franklin Elementary in Rochester, Minnesota, they have a Montessori K whatever program for half the building, and then the neighborhood school still remains a part of it. And I need to channel my inner Director Clausen right now, former Director Clausen. And he always talked about year-round schools. And I think it would be, when we're looking at academies, potentially looking at that as an option where not year-round 4-day school week, year-round 5-day school week, longer summer, or shorter summer, longer, smaller breaks. So that would be my one addition to it.
All right. Any closing remarks from directors?
I got one quick one because I didn't get to my one note. When we look at the committee, whatever's going to look at paired schools specifically, I think something that would be helpful for me and probably helpful for everyone is not, we have the one example, and it's very clear that it's an example, but we need to, whatever different pairings, all the different models, we need to have, I believe it was former Director Pilcher-Hayek that suggested a rubric, and I think that is a great idea of what are the pros and cons, not just the numbers of what classes look like if we pair these two and these two, but what are the transportation costs, all the other things that go into it. I think that is a great way to, objectively find solutions that will make the most sense. And maybe you'll find one pairing that is far and above better and everything. Maybe you'll find like 4 that are great, right? And I would suggest that we look at not just some of the smaller schools, because we may find efficiencies if we pair bigger schools that are right next to each other. I mean, a lot of the North Liberty schools are really close to each other. I'm going to get all the North Liberty folks mad at me right now. But it's something to just think about. Like, there are options out there. And the one other little point I want to make, I feel like there was this question of, are we trying to have fiscal responsibility and saving costs? Are we trying to have equitable class sizes? And I would say it's not an or, right? It's an and, right? We need to do both of those things. So that was the last things I missed.
Thank you. Superintendent Degner, do you want to have final
Yeah, I would
remarks?
just kind of leave it with, I hope what was communicated tonight is some of the why, right? And I feel like that's what I tried to say in some of those opening comments is why we're here and why we're continuing to look at these. And you heard many of the directors echo that. I appreciate Director Lingo talking about the enrollment piece and fleshing that out, because we're in the middle of commissioning a new demographers report, and we'll have that back to us sometime over the next few months. And then also understanding that it's a process, right? That this is a process for us to look at it, and hopefully that provided some sense of the speed that this is moving rather than just the timeline that we had referenced previously. But then also, I think the last thing is understanding that this process doesn't mean we still won't have a budget process to work through, right? That there's still some potential implications of budget. These likely won't fix all of those challenges, but it's our attempt. That's why we're starting it now in September rather than waiting till what we would do in our usual budget planning cycle and starting some of these conversations now to know if there is value, from those two lenses Sean just talked through about knowing if it's good for kids and if it's also, a better or more efficient use of our resources. So again, thanks for your comments tonight, and thanks for the director's deliberations on it.
Great, thank you. Next up is on our agenda is our action item, which is the 100 series policy. Were there any additional comments, questions from directors? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion whether to approve or disapprove.
I move that we approve the 100 series policies.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is our director liaison reports. Are there anything that directors would like to highlight that they took part in over this last month? Hearing none, I will move on to agenda setting. So our next meeting is the Education Committee meeting. That will be on September 17th. We will start at 4:30 and we will be at Mann Elementary. Looks like we will be talking about level 2 of high reliability schools. Followed by our September 24th meeting, Policy and Governance, will meet that night. They're scheduled for 5:30, and it looks as though they'll be discussing the 200 series policies. And we will have our regularly scheduled board meeting at 6 o'clock. There will be an education showcase, as well as the first passing of the 200 series. Discussion of cell phones, high reliability schools. I'm assuming I don't know how soon we'll have an update on next steps or how quickly the committee will be formed. Is that possible or is that too soon?
I think the most likely thing at the 24th would be if we could give you any kind of committee membership at that point and semblance of a committee.
Great. We'll have the quarterly financial report as well as the instructional support levy resolution of intent. There any, Director Eastham?
Thank you, President Malone. I had the honor of touring the City High Fine Arts facilities in the last several days. Unfortunately, I did so without following the complete protocol that we're supposed to follow in terms of notifying various people, for which I apologize. But I came away with it with the notion that the observation that the fine arts facilities at City High, particularly the ones that are supporting music and dance, are maybe not where they should be in terms of the current student needs, as well as additional student participation in fine arts over the next few years. So I was wondering, and I had some conversation, I think, with Superintendent Degner about this matter. So I was wondering if we could perhaps put it on our agenda at some point anyway, a consideration of looking at the physical facilities at City High for their fine arts programs.
I'm sure we can, but I would only suggest that we do that in conjunction with looking at our facilities master plan, because that all ties together on
sure.
if there's anything to be done, we would have to consider like the entire plan and the funding there. So I don't know if that's best done at a work session, operations, board meeting. I'm looking at Superintendent Degner and Deputy Superintendent Chase Ramey, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd probably just want a chance to talk about it and see where it lands, but I'm not surprised to hear that one tonight from talking to a couple of you guys, that would be something we would need to come back with. So we can kind of ballpark it for the 24th and see if it fits in the meeting, or if we would do a work session afterwards. I know you listed cell phones in the regular meeting, but we've kind of been taking that in work session format too. But I think we can come back to it in some way on the 24th. And have that conversation around some of those fine arts. Yeah, so we can put it there.
That sounds good.
I'm just going to apologize to everyone. I have to be out of state for work on the 24th, so I will not be here. But my husband has been scheduled for Education Showcase. So I will not be here to grill him with questions, and I'm going to rely on the six of you to make it as pleasant, and that's with heavy sarcasm, as an experience as possible for him. But he is upset that I have to miss his big moment in the sun, and I told him I'd watch it on TV. But I won't be here next meeting.
Yeah, I would just want to, I know we had talked about it in like a parking lot thing, but I would really like to get an update of just how things are going with the switch to middle schools.
Mhm.
Like just, not the construction part, I understand that's a pain point, but just how it's going, right? What kind of, how the programming changes are going. I've heard rumblings about how terrible lunch is, and I've also had other people tell me how my niece loved it. She was.
My daughter's in love with all of the choices.
She was.
It's really terrible when we run out of Domino's pizza.
She was a fifth grader last year and never got to be the big kid at the elementary and moved up, and she's really having a good time there. And so, I've had great stories from her, but I just kind of like to get an update.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to hear about the update on construction.
We'll give a full update on the 24th.
Okay, no,
Yep.
I mean, I think that's pretty.
I think that's necessary. I mean,
Yes.
we'd be closing in October at that point. And the one thing I wanted to say that we still have, well, it's not really in the parking lot because it's scheduled. Director Finch, you'd asked about Center for Innovation. We're planning on taking that in the October Ed Committee meeting. So those are kind of, so you know the agenda for the first two Ed Committee meetings now with HRS Level 2, and then we'll come back to CFI in October and probably again at some point throughout the year. But we'll definitely do middle school update on the 24th. The one thing I'll probably talk to you guys about, depending on how far that FMP conversation goes on the 24th, and just continuing to think about that, if there's anybody else we want to have with us there, if we'll keep it focused on kind of that City High music spot, or if it becomes about evaluating some of those other options we talked about, we might want to have some other team members there with us. So kind of be thinking about that one, because we'll talk about that in between as well.
Great. All right. Anything else? Before I call for a motion to adjourn, just a reminder to board members as well as administration who will join us tonight. We do have a work session scheduled immediately following this meeting, but we will go for about 10 minutes after the meeting ends to allow people to stretch their legs or go get something to drink. With that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Sorry. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.